Hey there, welcome back to Module 2, which is about catch emails. And here in Lesson 2, we're actually going to write your catch email. And so that's what our point here is in this lesson. This is a big lesson and there's a lot of content, so let's go ahead and dive in. Here in Lesson 2, you're going to learn the 5-part catch email structure, the role served by each part of the catch email, and how to craft your own catch email. So we're going to go through that, and you're actually going to go through and dig in and do the work. So that's what we're doing here in this lesson. So look, a lot of people talk about using a confirmation email with feeling or a delivery email with feeling, and people use different words for it, but they don't give you a clear guide on what to include in that email. So they'll tell you that it's, with feeling, or they'll have some name for it, but the name doesn't really help you. Well, that's where I came in, because catch is actually an acronym that tells you exactly what to write. There are 5 parts to the catch email. And when you remember the acronym, you'll be able to know exactly what to write in your catch email. So here is what it stands for. C is for congratulate them on the decision. Basically, you got to congratulate them. You got to say, hey, congratulations on, taking this step. A is to acknowledge the frustration that they feel. T is tells me about you. In other words, this tells me this about you. C is a credibility boost, and H is a hook to your next email. So again, catch is congratulate, acknowledge, tells me about you, credibility, and hook. You can remember that acronym, and then you'll always know what you're supposed to be writing in this email. So that's kind of the 5-part structure. Now let's dive in and let's do the nitty-gritty work. So part 1, the first part of your email is to congratulate the decision. This one is pretty self-explanatory, and there's really not a lot there. You need to start by congratulating new subscribers on the decision to grab your freebie. It's literally just that simple. There's nothing else. There's nothing that is, harder than that. But the important thing is that the freebie sets the stage, because the decision to download the freebie is what gives you insight for what's to come. In other words, them taking the action that they did of downloading the freebie, grabbing a spot in your webinar, or whatever it is that they did, that is what actually gives you insight and allows you to acknowledge, tells me about you, etc. The following steps that come in this email all stem from that one decision. So you need to congratulate them. And again, put them in a good mood and obviously talk about, hey, this was something to do. And it's really not that hard. You can just use this structure. Congrats on either grabbing, downloading, grabbing your seat out, whatever, kind of language you want, my free, and then put the name of the freebie. And that's it. And it's pretty simple. It's a pretty self-explanatory process. So, it really isn't anything that's you're going to have to spend a lot of time on. This one you should be able to write in a matter of a minute or less. But here's quickly kind of from my current catch email that goes out when someone downloads my free privacy policy. This is how it begins. You see that's the beginning, the salutation, and my introduction. And here is the congratulations part. Congratulations on grabbing my free privacy policy legal template. That's it. Now, again, this is one of those situations I mentioned in the last lesson, how ideally the delivery email is the catch email. This one is not, because it's a membership area. So what I say is, hey, you'll be getting an email from Karcher with your login credentials to access the template and video instructions. So I'm telling them that. If they get to download it, this is where you might say, hey, here's your link to download. But, that's just going to be if you can do that. So that's all it is. And then you see there's a sentence after, while you wait, I wanted to take a second to get honest with you. And that's really just the transition into part 2. You're always going to have to, when we look at structures on emails, just kind of to foreshadow this for you throughout the rest of the program, oftentimes there's going to be something you have to transition from one piece to the next. And you'll have to create what works based upon what you have for the key elements here. But like I said, the congratulate is very simple. You should be able to write that without trouble. That then takes us to part 2. And part 2 is where you acknowledge the frustration. So this is kind of one of the big things that is going to, set you apart if you're doing this in your catch email. So acknowledging the frustration is about setting yourself apart from the noise they are hearing from other people. So there's a couple of things here. Number one, this is part of what builds your credibility and sets you up as an expert because you're kind of acknowledging things they're seeing, etc. But here's the big thing here. You're going to want to kind of take a stand here and take a stand that is maybe a little bit different than maybe conventional wisdom or something else. And the acknowledgement where you do that in a way that actually sets yourself apart and acknowledges a problem that they're facing that other people aren't solving for them really helps you. Now, again, this lesson here isn't an email itself, but you may have noticed at the beginning I talked about how other people talk about sending a confirmation email with feeling, but they don't tell you what to include. Well, see, that was me setting myself apart. That would almost be a way of me acknowledging the frustration that you might be seeing. So if someone had downloaded a freebie, if I had a freebie about writing catch emails, for example, I could talk about that and I could acknowledge that piece. So that's an example of acknowledging a frustration that they're seeing. So generally the structure of this system will be a 3-part structure. You're going to declare something that seems like an obvious truth. You're going to use a thought reversal pattern related to the obvious truth, and then you're going to pivot to good news to transition to the next section. So the thought reversal, if this is not a concept you're familiar with, it's a concept of saying you're going to kind of, when everybody else is zigging, you're going to zag. You're going to put yourself apart. You're going to set yourself apart by telling them the hard truth, by giving them some truth bombs, for example, or by saying, telling them something that they don't need to be doing that other people are telling them they need to do. So that's an example of a thought reversal pattern. The acknowledgement here, again, you need to kind of think through what this is and how this is going to work in your particular industry, in your particular circumstance. But let's walk through mine from my privacy policy. So this is the section, and this is the top, and here's what it goes. It says, this is the obvious truth. While you wait, again, I wanted to take a second to get honest with you. Again, that's the transition. Online marketing is full of sexy stuff, like the new online software that's going to solve every problem you've thought of and 157 you didn't know you had. And we hear all about the 6-figure launches and the latest social media hacks. So again, these are things that my ideal customer avatar, my ideal client, they're hearing these things. I mean, they're talking about software and, is Kajabi going to solve my problem? Kartra and all this. They're hearing all of these things. And also, you're hearing people talk about their launches and about social media and all those things. So I'm kind of setting the stage. And that is the obvious truth part, where I'm talking about things that my audience is hearing, they know about, and they understand. But then I pivot to the thought reversal. And I say, we all love the sexy stuff, but I'm going to share some truth bombs with you. This is where I'm basically going to go against the grain. There's no silver bullet when it comes to software. People succeed and fail using every software solution under the sun. 6-figure launches don't come overnight, and you shouldn't trust anyone who says different. And Khloe Kardashian's baby is pretty much always going to have more followers than you or me. So again, what I'm doing there is, first of all, I'm kind of going back to those obvious truths that we were talking about at the beginning, and I'm diffusing them, and I'm saying, look, this stuff that we hear about, it's BS. I'm basically shooting holes in everything that most people are talking about. I'm saying you shouldn't be worrying and listening to all these people talking about some super sexy online software system. And you shouldn't be expecting to have 6-figure launches. And oh, by the way, those social media hacks are BS and they're not going to solve your problem. And so that's what I'm doing here. I'm saying these obvious things that you're hearing about, I'm just going to go ahead and tell you, I'm going to be the one who levels with you and tells you that's not the truth. And then I transition to the good news. I said, that's the bad news, but there's also some good news. So this is a classic structure that you can use for your acknowledge the pain. So you start by, in a sense, talking about a positive thing, and then you kind of transition to the reality, look, let me give you some truth here, and then you say, but I've got some good news. That's a structure that you can use every single time for your acknowledge phase. That then takes us to the third part, and the third part is tells me about you. So this is where you explain that the subscriber downloading your freebie tells you that they are destined for success. And again, you're not going to say it just like that, but here's the thing. Literally the only thing you know about someone at this point is that they've downloaded your freebie. So that is the only piece of information you have, but you're going to spin and you're going to explain how that one decision is huge and demonstrates that they are different, that they're going to succeed. In other words, that they're not going to be a struggling whatever. So that's what you're doing here in the tells me about you section. So, structure, this is kind of the structure for it. You're destined to succeed, and that's kind of it. Then you're going to give two different reasons. And, you don't just give a reason, but you kind of explain why you can tell that they're different and that they're going to be different than the people who are struggling. So that's the structure here for the tells me about you section. So let's go ahead and look at this here in that same email. The destined to succeed at the top. You have the secret to long-term success as an online marketer. Remember, this comes right after I said that, but here's the good news. And then it says, and it has nothing to do with the sexy stuff. So I'm basically saying, hey, you're going to succeed. After I've told them, hey, all this BS you hear in the market is BS, I said, I got good news. You have the secret. So I'm basically telling them that they are destined to succeed. And then I go into reason number one. Successful entrepreneurs know that to succeed, they're going to have to do the sexy stuff and the non-sexy stuff. There's no doubt you, first name, that's how my system inserts their first name, are among the few who gets it. You clearly aren't shying away from the non-sexy stuff. I mean, you just grabbed a privacy policy template because you care about the legal stuff. So you see how what I've done there is, number one, that first structure, that first sentence, the way I started it, successful entrepreneurs. This is something you should think about, and you should think about this structure. Whatever your ICA is, you want to think about saying successful and then fill in how you would describe your ICA. Know, do, understand, gets, etc. Because what you're doing when you do that is you're setting up this thing of saying, hey, the successful people do it this way, and then you can say, and you are too. So that's kind of a good structure you're going to use. And it's a way to do this in a very kind of nuanced way that you're saying successful people know how to do this. And then you can see how I kind of said, and I know you're one of those successful people because downloading a privacy policy template is clearly not the sexy stuff of online entrepreneurship. So I've gone ahead and said that they're destined to succeed because they're willing to do the non-sexy stuff, and I know that because of the action they took. You see how I kind of did this in a very subtle way. Now, then in the second reason, it's a similar structure. Successful entrepreneurs also aren't afraid to put in the work to get shit done. Taking it slow and bootstrapping ain't bad. We all dream of getting past the point of bootstrapping, especially the non-sexy stuff. But there's no shame in doing it yourself. Grabbing my privacy policy template tells me you aren't afraid of a little bootstrapping either. So again, here's part of the thing is I'm choosing a second attribute that I believe successful entrepreneurs have, which is that we're scrappy. And that I don't use the word hustle because I don't like the word hustle, but I'm basically saying, look, being willing to do this stuff matters. And so I'm, again, validating their decision. So the big thing to see about this is what you're doing here is I'm establishing kind of credibility, but really what I'm doing is I'm validating the decision they just made. Because the decision they just made to download your thing hopefully is something, that it's taking them on a path to ultimately buy from you. So we want to validate that decision and say, you taking that decision is the thing that's going to make you successful. See, and this is what I'm saying. We're saying that this tells me about you, but this is what I'm saying. It tells me that you're destined to succeed is the message I want to get across, because I want in their mind, and you want in their mind, for them to associate taking actions that you're going to tell them to take related to what you offer to your area of business is the key to success. So you can kind of see how subliminally we're basically programming people to say, hey, they should continue to do what we're saying because what we're telling them, following us, will help them get to being successful. So this is a section that is very nuanced, but it's really good when you actually do it right. So that's kind of the end. That's how you do it. Again, this is the entire tells me about you section. And again, some people, you could make it very simple. I mean, you could actually say, you downloading, my whatever freebie and give it a good name, tells me that you are destined to succeed, or that you are different, or that you're one of the people who's going to get this done. Whatever it is, you can literally use the language tells me that you. You don't have to, but I use that because that's the best way to do it. It tells me that you are different, you're going to succeed, and you're going to get through this stuff. And so that's what you want to do, and that's what this section of your catch email is about. Then the next piece is a credibility boost. And so, by the way, you'll notice up to this point, you haven't talked about yourself yet at all. I mean, other than to say, hey, it's me, like I said at the beginning, hey, it's Bobby, or really it's my robots. But that's just my sense of humor. But you haven't talked about yourself yet because this email isn't really about you until you get to the credibility boost. You do want to basically give yourself a little bit of credibility boost. So this is where you explain why you are the perfect guide for their journey. So it's basically setting you up as the person that, hey, you made a good decision to follow me. So that's what you're doing in this section. So again, back to my email. This is the section that is my credibility boost. Now you see at the beginning, luckily you found a guide for the legal stuff who ain't half bad. But what I want to point out to you is these two sections here, these aren't so much about credibility, they're about showing my voice. Remember back in module 1, we talked about developing your voice. So again, the first thing I say is you picked someone who ain't half bad, and I start by saying, if you're into beer brewing, jargon-free, slightly irreverent lawyers who use poop emojis and pop culture references, that is. So again, I'm in a sense doing this kind of humorous thing right at the beginning because, of course, none of that has anything to do with the legal stuff. And so you do that. And then you see at the end, I say, I guess some people are into those kinds of things. Whatevs, after I actually give my credentials. What I'm doing there is trying to connect with people, and especially connect with people who are my kind of people. So if you can work your voice into this section so they can start to understand your personality, that's even better. So that's what those two paragraphs are about. And then here you see is where I actually lay out my credentials. And if you're into more traditional things, like a lawyer who graduated with honors from Harvard Law School, was mentored by a future Supreme Court justice, and worked at elite law firms, all me, by the way. So I put that as my actual credibility boost. But you see that what I've done here is given a credibility boost, but also used my voice, my cadence, the way I talk to really start building that connection. Because we know from Module 1, we want to build connection here. That's really what we're trying to do in every email we send. And so that's why, this is the way that I've crafted this. But again, you'll craft this by having just a little bit of credibility boosting about what you've accomplished, what your credentials are, what it is that allows you to be qualified to be their guide on this journey. So that's the purpose of this section. Then part 5 is a hook to the next email. So if subscribers will always get the same next email, add a hook to create an open loop to get them curious. Now, the important part is you're only going to do this if your system is built so that they will always get the same next email. If they may not always get the same next email, you can't do this. And that's the case in my case with this catch email. So you sometimes will leave the hook off. The reason why for my system it's very complicated, but some people will download my privacy policy while they're in the middle of another sequence and will just continue that other sequence. Some people will do that, then go to my welcome sequence. So because I have it in different places, I can't put a hook here. But if they will always go to the same next email, you'll want to add a hook to create an open loop to get them curious. So the structure for this is pretty simple. Be on the lookout for my next email where I'll, and then you kind of tell them what you'll do or something like that. That's how you create an open loop. You're just going to do something that is curiosity inducing. That's like they're saying, well, I got to see what this is about, is kind of the idea here. So I wanted to pull an example. This is from my welcome sequence, one of the emails, but this is like basically the last line before my sign off in one of them. It's like, next up, you'll hear how I managed to stay married even after getting a text from my wife that said, why are you sending me pictures of you with random women? Now, you understand if someone doesn't know my story and doesn't know the story of that and the selfie I took with where Amy Porterfield photobombed me, they're going to see this and they're going to be like, wait, I got to understand what this story is, right? And so that's the concept of a hook, is it hooks them in and primes them so that they're ready and want to open your next email. And so that's what you're doing with the hook. It's basically priming them to open the next email you're going to send. So that's the last piece. That's your hook. So we've covered a lot. And that's why we created a workbook here on this page, here in this area. You'll be able to get your workbook, which will help you work through this. Again, because right now your key lesson takeaway is to grab the workbook and go draft your badass catch email now. Again, this is one that it's worth putting the work in, because this email is the first thing you're going to do. And if you do it right, you've subliminally set the message that, number one, you understand their pain, you feel their pain. Number two, you've set yourself apart from the noise they're hearing everywhere else. Number three, you've also basically established that, hey, if they continue to take steps on what you're telling them, again, this is all subliminal. You're saying they'll get that that's the key to success. So you're doing all of that stuff in this email. So you want to spend some time in this email. So after you've done the work, I want you to go into the Facebook group, and I want you to post your catch email, get comments, and let's interact and let's see what we can do. But your big takeaway and your big piece of homework, grab the workbook and go draft your badass catch email now. So that's it for this module. Like I said, module 2 is a short one because there's only one email, but it's an important one. But in the next module, here's what we're going to learn. You're going to learn all about nurture sequences. You're going to learn the different kinds of nurture sequences, and you're going to learn how to craft your own nurture sequence, and you're going to get that work done. So that's what we'll be doing in the next module. But right now, go write that catch email and make sure it's good. Talk to you later.